Week 4 of college football was amazing. Week 5 looks better on paper. So what could possibly top what we saw last weekend and have really for the first month of the season here in 2021? Welcome into the Voice of College Football on a Friday night. And what a matchup we've got already on a Friday night. This is a bit of a treat for a Friday night to have undefeated teams in the Big Ten going head-to-head. 4-0 Maryland hosting 4-0 Iowa. I invite everyone in, and of course, we will be taking your calls for the next 2 hours leading up to kickoff, and then we will have post-game Maryland-Iowa coverage right here at the Voice of College Football, also on the Iowa channel after the game, also on the Big Ten channel after the game. Jump into the live chat, leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics right there, and we will get to them right now. Who's number one? Who's the first? Yes, Mike, 3883, good to see you. My picks have been terrible this year. Mike, you and everybody else. So you're just in with everybody else on this. Terrible picks this year. Other than NC State Clemson, good call. I need Michigan State to beat Western Kentucky big. Big, like 12 points big, I'm guessing. Not skipping the ads. Are we having an ad issue? Too many ads? Mike, 3883 says, this first of 2 ads over the 20 seconds left. This first of 2 ads has over 20 seconds left. That's too many. We need to do something about that. Trying to control YouTube is an endless pursuit. So I've got to look into that. Everybody's been really kind about going through the ads, and I need ads, of course, to pay the bills. But we want the ads to be infrequent. I would like everybody to be able to watch at least 4 or 5 minutes of a video. I would like you to be able to maybe take in that first 5 seconds, skip that first ad, then start watching a video, and then maybe 5 minutes later, boom, first video, first ad that you have to encounter after 5 minutes. 3 minutes. And see, that's not coming up for me, and it's really not on my mind anymore because I decided a few months ago that it would pay for me to sign up for YouTube Premium. And I don't expect anyone else to do that. That's not what I'm saying. It's about $12 a month. But just because of all the time that I'm online and that's all I do is just stay online all day, it just pays for itself for me to not waste all that time. Time is money, as they say. And especially for me, time is money. Time is valuable. So I bypassed the ads by getting YouTube Premium. I don't expect anybody else to do that for my channel. And so I need to be more cognizant of what's going on because it doesn't seem to matter what I set as the ad settings. It seems to do whatever it wants. And then I've got to go back and it'll show me when the ads are placed in each particular video. And there's typically an ad that's placed about a minute into the video. And then I delete that because I don't want people watching an ad 1 minute into the video after you had to click through an ad. You know, it's one thing to be presented that opening ad, have to wait 5 seconds before you can skip it, then skip it. I have no issue with that. But then if the video is 10 or 15, 20 minutes long, then I don't want to show you an ad until at least 5 minutes into the video, something like that. So, Mike, thanks for the heads up. I'm going to mark that down, and I'm going to check all the videos that were released this week. Although, at this point, it's Friday night. Nobody typically is going to watch the rest of the videos that I produced this week because they all have to do with Saturday's games. Speaking of which, tonight we've got Houston. They're 3-1. They're taking on Tulsa. We saw the Golden Hurricane play close against Oklahoma State and Ohio State this year. I believe the Tulsa Golden Hurricane maybe 1-3. I don't know what they did last weekend. They were 0-3 after the game against the Buckeyes in Columbus. So Tulsa hosting Houston tonight. That game on ESPN at 7:30. The big one, of course, Iowa, Maryland in the Big Ten. The Hawkeyes are number 5 in the country, or in the top 25, that actually makes sense. They are number 5 in the country at Maryland. BYU number 13 at Utah State. Can't wait to take that one in. Maybe Utah State hangs in there. They're only a 9-point underdog. So it's the Aggies taking on the Cougars tonight at 9 o'clock on CBS Sportsnet. Then tomorrow, here we go, noon, we get rolling right out of the gate. Arkansas, Georgia, dogs a big 18.5-point favorite. We've released so much content this week on Arkansas and Georgia. Just have at it. Great discussions with Savannah Lee Richardson and with Ty Hudson on Arkansas and Georgia football this week. So we got you covered on all the big games this week. We previewed Arkansas, Georgia. Then also at noon, Michigan, Wisconsin. We had our 10-minute war conversation with Steve Dace from Michigan Podcast on Tuesday. We also discussed Michigan football with Justin Rowe from Blue by 90 Podcast, and also Clayton Safey from Rivals the Wolverine, and then also Tyler Hunt from SB Nation on Wisconsin. So we took it from both sides on Michigan, Wisconsin, and also Arkansas, Georgia. Tennessee, Missouri, coming up at noon on the SEC Network tomorrow. Charlotte, Illinois, Pitt, Georgia Tech on the ACC Network. That's actually an important game in the ACC Coastal. Pitt playing its first game in the conference. Georgia Tech barely lost to Clemson. Think of the disadvantage that Georgia Tech football has every year. And this is why there has to be something done with in-conference scheduling. They have to apply my plan or somebody's plan that's reasonable and equitable. Georgia Tech has to play Clemson every year. So if Georgia Tech's going to have to play Clemson every year, then that has to be offset. Regardless, Georgia Tech almost beat Clemson, of course, and then they did beat North Carolina by 3 scores last weekend. So key game in the Coastal Division, Pitt taking on Georgia Tech in Atlanta. Duke, North Carolina. Don't look now, but the Dukies are 3-1 outside the conference, and now they step into ACC play, their ACC opener at North Carolina. North Carolina already with 2 division losses. All of us, I can't think of anybody except for Miami fans who were not predicting Clemson, North Carolina to play in the ACC championship game. And look at this. We just hit the first day of October, and North Carolina is behind the 8 ball with 2 losses, and Clemson looks beyond vulnerable. Then also at noon, we've got Minnesota, Purdue. The Gophers coming off that embarrassing loss as a 31-point favorite against Bowling Green. Purdue, Aiden O'Connell at quarterback or Jack Plummer at quarterback? Jack Plummer has been the starting quarterback. He won the job out of camp, and then he's repeatedly won the job and been confirmed as the starter, but he was relieved against Notre Dame. He was relieved against Illinois last week, and Aiden O'Connell came in, and he's more of a dual threat quarterback through the game-winning touchdown pass. So Purdue takes on Illinois, or Minnesota. They beat Illinois last week. It's Purdue and Minnesota in West Lafayette tomorrow. Toledo, UMass, Texas, TCU, an ABC game at noon tomorrow. Noon Eastern time, Texas, TCU. Texas has lost to TCU 7 of 9 times. And TCU is a 4.5-point dog at home, coming off a loss to SMU, a game that struck up the ire of one Gary Patterson after the game. Very upset about the planting of the flag, the SMU flag, I believe, at midfield at TCU. Memphis Temple playing on ESPNU at noon. Western Michigan, Buffalo, Louisville, and Wake. Louisville and Wake. Okay, Louisville's hot right now. They beat Florida State last week. They got a nice win against somebody else before that. They beat Florida State last week. Oh, they beat UCF before that. So Louisville's got no losses in the conference. Picked up a conference win. They're 3-1. Wake is 4-0, with a conference win, and they put this game on ESPN 3. Appalachian State taking on Georgia State. That's a 2 o'clock game. So those are the noon games. We'll just go through the noon games right there. And my 55-inch is going to be on Arkansas, Georgia, I guess. I think because of my watch options online, I'm going to have to go with Michigan, Wisconsin on the 55-inch, and then put Arkansas, Georgia on the screen I'm looking at you on right now. That's going to be my Georgia, Arkansas option right there. And then my third game, I've got to go with Pitt and Georgia Tech. That's going to be a good game, although Minnesota, Purdue, although TCU, Texas. I wouldn't mind watching Minnesota, I wouldn't mind watching Minnesota, Purdue. I wouldn't mind watching Missouri, Tennessee. There are actually 3, 4, 5, 6 games at noon I would like to see. There are 6 games at noon. This is my problem with college football. Every weekend, there are too many games that I want to see. 6 games I would like to see at noon tomorrow. Arkansas, Georgia. I can't believe this is rare that I would have a game trump Michigan, Wisconsin, but it's got to be for me Arkansas, Georgia. Then Michigan, Wisconsin. Then I actually like this Pitt Georgia Tech matchup. I'm a bit intrigued by Pitt and Georgia Tech. The winner of this game may be the front runner for the division championship. Texas TCU. Minnesota Purdue. I will give a nod over Tennessee, Missouri. 3 really good games at noon. 2 monumental games at noon. 6 more than watchable games at noon. All right, the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. I would like to remind everyone that you can contribute to the show via the Super Chat, but also PayPal, Venmo, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV, go to Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App, and you bypass YouTube that way. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Also, keep in mind that we've got post-game all over the place. We've got post-game tonight after Maryland, Iowa, right here. Big Ten channel, Iowa channel. Pick your option. I would actually prefer you to watch it here, but wherever you can catch it, the Big Ten channel, the Iowa channel, or right here. We've got Iowa, Maryland post-game tonight. And then we've got post-game of Michigan, Wisconsin. We've got post-game on Arkansas, Georgia. Post-game on Texas and TCU. So 3 of the noon games. We've got post-game 4 on the Michigan channel, on the Georgia channel, and the SEC channel, and on the Texas channel. 860-499-3332. I will place the number on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. 860-499-3332. What do you guys have for me tonight? As our aim is to preview week 5 of college football and bring you right up to the kickoff of Iowa and Maryland right here at the Voice of College Football. I am pumped. Mike, again, thank you for letting me know about the ads. I got to do something about that because I cannot keep spending time going through videos and then resetting the ads after they've been botched by YouTube. And I don't want people to get frustrated trying to watch my videos and ads popping up after 30 seconds. Can't have that. Mike 3883. I only care about it when it's live and you have the best openings and I don't want to miss it. Mike, I appreciate that comment. It's funny because I could do better on my opens. Every so often I tell myself, Mark, you can do better. Got to do better. Bring it. Mo's been stepping up for Notre Dame recently. Mo has been here talking up the Irish big the last few days. Notre Dame will roll Maryland or Iowa. Well, unless we see them in the college football playoff, we will never know. D-Rock Irish sees a Maryland upset win over Iowa tonight. You can catch my pick on Patreon. Just go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. You get my prediction of tonight's Maryland-Iowa game. The Hawkeyes are about a 3-point favorite on the road. I rarely pick against a better defensive team, especially when Maryland's offense isn't really that much better than Iowa's. I know statistically it is, but in reality, it's not. And Iowa's defense is substantially better than Maryland's. But Bo Weevil, go Clemson. Still back in those Clemson Tigers. This is when you actually can prove to be a true fan. These type seasons, the type season that Clemson has started to have, is when you can show yourself to be a true fan. Actually, some of my more satisfying seasons as a fan is when I rooted for my team when they weren't on top of the world, when there was adversity, when they got kicked around, when people were criticizing, making fun of them. Those were the more satisfying seasons for me, rooting for my teams. D-Rock, LSU over number 22 Auburn tomorrow in my other upset special. Actually, that's not an upset, D-Rock. LSU is the favorite. LSU is the favorite. Forget the rankings. LSU is the favorite. They are a 3-point favorite, 3.5-point favorite in that game. Mike says most Buckeye fans are rooting for Notre Dame this week, but I'm rooting for Cincinnati. If the Buckeyes don't make the playoffs, there's nobody to blame but themselves. Yes and no there. Most of the time you can say if a team does not make the playoffs, the only ones they can blame would be themselves, although there are a couple times out there during our 7 years of college football playoffs where a team could actually blame the college football playoff selection committee. Dan Davis says, did you see the message Chip and UCLA sent to Utah? Why is UCLA sending messages to Utah? I did not see that. Fill me in. Call me. Send us a note in the live chat. I did not see what Chip Kelly had to say. Chip Kelly, I don't really think is in the position to be sending messages to anyone at this point. Win games. Get to 500, Chip, before you're sending messages to Utah, especially in the week that you're playing Arizona State. D-Rock, big game tomorrow in the Bend. Huge, huge, huge. Yes, huge. One of the 3 biggest of the day. I would say Michigan, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Georgia, and Ole Miss, Alabama. And then we'll throw in Notre Dame and Cincinnati as well. Mo says Cincy is nobody. It's a big game for them. Notre Dame will roll Cincy. Cincy has never existed. Interesting how we can speak of something that does not exist. FSU, no. Mark, glad you are still with us from the concussion. I may sometimes sound like I've had a concussion, but go Noles. Florida State's got to win this weekend. If they cannot beat Syracuse at home, Lambda says if you don't want opponents celebrating on your field, beat them. That's one way to look at it, certainly. D-Rock got to win it first. Mo Dean, it's already won. Mo Dean sounds like Notre Dame's gone undefeated for about 12 years in a row. Mo Dean, so your avatar here, I have a crystal ball. Look at my avatar. Are we talking about, is that Nostradamus? Would that be Nostradamus there? I watched a documentary on Nostradamus probably about a year ago. Fascinating. D-Rock likes the live shows. You know what, D-Rock? I like the live shows too. This is my favorite part of the deal, the live shows, talking directly with you. The Real Hayden, 16 NFL teams sent scouts to Iowa-Maryland game tonight. Wowza. Scouting those offensive linemen and tight ends for the Hawkeyes, scouting those skill position players for the Terps. Ed Rogers, get the girlfriend in the game. Get her to educate you. Bo Weevil likes Cincinnati to win at 27-24. Vegas has the Bearcats as a 2-point favorite on the road. Humphrey says Notre Dame offense is suspect as my Sooners. For sure, even more so. 3 rushing yards against Wisconsin. Wisconsin does have one of the best defenses in the country. I have no doubt about that. But still, 3 yards rushing. Take away the sacks. College football's got to do something about the oddity of the stat that skews the rushing yardage because of sacks. That's stupid. They have to do something about that. We clearly can see that a quarterback is back to pass and then he gets sacked. That should not be taken away versus rushing yardage. We get it. He has not thrown the football, so it cannot be counted as pass yardage, but he also is not attempting to run the ball. So I like the way the NFL counts rushing and passing yardage and accounts for sacks much better. But Notre Dame, regardless, Kyron Williams only ran for 33 yards on 18 carries. Notre Dame's offense needs to figure out how to run the ball. Jack Cohn cannot throw the ball, have to be forced to throw the ball 40 or 45 times against Cincinnati. That cannot happen. That is not sustainable. Jimmy Satterfield, are the Irish going to beat Cincinnati? Well, we've got various opinions here, Jimmy. You can catch my picks on Patreon. They did not roll Toledo. Well, that was Toledo, Ed. That was Toledo. That was the Rockets, the mighty Rockets. Mo, yes, Notre Dame will beat Cincy like a red-headed stepchild. Lambda, how good is Maryland's defense? It's been pretty good thus far. They gave up 17 points to Illinois, which Illinois certainly does not have any kind of prolific offense. Maryland held West Virginia in check in a 30-24 win. Again, West Virginia with not a prolific offense, but that's a decent effort. And then Maryland's other decent game. Actually, if you look at the breakdown of the play-by-play, the drive chart, the statistics against Kent State. I did not see Maryland play Kent State. I saw a couple plays. Maryland and Kent State played a close game. Looking at the analytics, they played a pretty close game despite Maryland winning that game 37-16. Maryland's defense is better. It's better. Let's put it that way. During last night's live stream in which we talked Maryland, Iowa with, we had our guy Corey Bratta on, of course, from the Iowa side. We had on Steve Suter, who was an All-American at Maryland. And he admitted that the key to this game would be to see whether Maryland in any way can hold up really on either side of the ball in the trenches, whether the defense is stout enough or the offensive line is stout enough to play with Iowa. During Maryland's time in the Big Ten, they have competed on the perimeter. Their running backs, their wide receivers, their secondary play has been good enough. The athletes are fast enough. They're skilled enough on the outside. They have produced NFL-type players in those 3 positions. Defensive back, corner, roughly defensive back, wide receiver, running back. But elsewhere, Maryland's been a mess. And the big difference this year, obviously, also has been you've probably had the worst quarterback play at one school, at a Power 5 school at Maryland, over the past 10 or 12 years. And they've turned that into possibly the best quarterback in the Big Ten. At least through 4 games, he's probably played better than anybody else in the Big Ten. Mike says Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Bama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Arkansas, Baylor, Oklahoma State. It's great to be a college football fan. Week 5. Dominic. Lambda, Auburn is a better team than they showed against Georgia State. I would hope so. Auburn was still hungover from the whiteout game, but good teams, really good teams, should be showing that they don't get hung over from big games. Humphrey, I guess, likes TCU against Texas. Dominic likes Iowa to beat Maryland tonight, 31-20. D-Rock on the Notre Dame offensive line. Until I see it, this will be very close. Notre Dame 27, Cincinnati 21. Go Irish. That's good enough, right, D-Rock? Just get the win. You're playing a top 10 team. Win the game. That's all you need. Win the game. Ed Rogers diving into the basketball portion of this conversation with Cincinnati. Of course, we're big college basketball people here. Cincinnati's won 2 national championships in basketball. Let me guess. 1959 and 60. Keaton. Boomer. Oklahoma taking on Kansas State on the road, looking to avenge, of course, the last 2 years' losses. Spencer Radler. Will the Oklahoma fans that travel, since they're on the road this week, the ones that travel, I wonder if they're going to be calling for Caleb Williams this week. McD, this is your night. This is your game. Let's go out. Let's stay undefeated. Let's beat a Big Ten undefeated top 5 team. Let's do it. No Mostradamus. I see what you're doing there, Mo. Mike likes the Bearcats 28-24. Web Securities here. FSU Gnome. Yes, concussion. You hit your head on the floor. You told that story late night recently. Yes, I know what you're alluding to there, FSU Gnome. No concussion. At least I don't think so. Dominic, my Virginia Cavaliers beat the Canes 30-28 yesterday. Let's go Cavs. So we have not talked about this. It's the latest buffoonery from Miami football. Trailing all night last night against Virginia at home as a 4 or 5 point favorite. Miami came down the field. They outplayed Virginia in the second half. They were down by 2 scores. 28-14, I believe, was the latest. 28-14 sometime in the second half. They outplayed Virginia in the fourth quarter, and Manny Diaz underlined that point about 12 times in the post-game news conference. We played like a winning football team in the fourth quarter. Okay, that's fine. Great. But if you're losing by 14 points going into the fourth quarter and you win the fourth quarter by 12 points, you're still a losing football team. So the question is, Miami moving the ball at will down the field in the final 3 to 4 minutes of play. It became apparent that they would be able to put themselves in a position to go for the game-winning field goal and run the clock out. They put themselves in a perfect position to completely kill the clock, not have to rush themselves, but also not leave Virginia any time to counter. But do you put that on the leg of the kicker, or do you try to just, as long as you're chipping away with, or really more than chipping away, just ripping apart the defense, through the run game, as they started to get conservative, once they moved it into scoring position, they got conservative, of course, trying to set up for the field goal, but they could not be stopped. They were gashing the Virginia defense with 10 and 12-yard runs. It's easy to say right now, of course, you go for the kill shot, you score the touchdown, and you win. But there are two things to consider. Number one is ball security, of course. That's the reason why both NFL and college coaches in that situation typically settle for the field goal, try to set it up within a short distance in the middle of the field to make it the easiest possible kick. There are two reasons for that. Number one, ball security. I don't know who's run the numbers, but maybe at some point somebody's run the numbers and determined that it is less likely that you're going to miss a field goal than it is that you are going to fumble the ball. Either miss-snap the ball, drop the ball, fumble the ball, throw a pass, get it intercepted. Okay. The other portion of that is if you are going to try to score a touchdown, the only issue there is it's nearly impossible to time that correctly, to time it so you can run the game out. You can't control when your offensive player is going to be tackled, when they're going to score. You can't say, okay, well, run it down to the 3-yard line with 5 seconds left, and then we're going to run the ball into the end zone, the final play of the game. So you don't have control over the clock when you play for the touchdown. So it's easy for people to come out and say, don't put the game on the leg of a kicker. Go for the touchdown. Be aggressive. Your offense is dominating the game. You're running at will. Just go ahead and score the touchdown. But you're going to score the touchdown with time left in the game. So you're going to score the touchdown. If you score the touchdown, if everything goes well and you continue to smash the ball down their throats, you're going to score the touchdown, but there's going to be how much time left in the game? 12 seconds, 32 seconds, 49 seconds, what? Because you cannot determine when you're going to score. Now, Virginia would have to counter with a touchdown and have very little time left, but they would have the opportunity with the ball, as opposed to completely controlling the situation by setting up your field goal kicker, running out the clock, kicking the ball on the final play of the game, if you trust your kicker. When you watch that on television and when you see a kick from that distance, and I think it was something like 36 yards, so they must have been at the 19-yard line, 17 yards for the placement and the snap and the end zone. So 17 yards added on to 19. So they were at the 19-yard line, 36-yard field goal. And you look at that on TV, it looks like it's almost impossible to miss. When he set up for that, I just thought, he's dead center. Even if he kicks it slightly off, they're close enough that he's going to make this field goal. Lo and behold, it's a miss. Now, what would be interesting to check out here, as we continue to remind everyone that I'm taking calls at 860-499-3332, is Borgalis's numbers going into this game were what? Andre Borgalis had not attempted a field goal in this game. He kicked 4 extra points, and going into this kick, he was 6 for 8. 6 for 8. It's pretty dependable. That's 75%. It's not stellar. It's not legendary. It's not elite, but it's good. He was, I believe this kick again was from between 30 and 39, a 36-yard field goal. He was going into that attempt 2 for 3 from 20 to 29 yards, 2 for 3 from 30 to 39 yards. So basically, going into this kick, he was 4 of 6 from that distance without pressure. Those other kicks, I believe, didn't have a whole lot of pressure. He did kick the game-leading kick against App State. They won that game 25-23. I believe he kicked a field goal with maybe 5 minutes left in the game, but 5 minutes left in the game's not 12 seconds left in the game. He kicked a game-winning field goal, and I say game-winning field goal because it was the last points of the game to win the game against App State. All the other kicks against Michigan State and Alabama and Central Connecticut State meant little. So from that distance and less, he was only 4 of 6, 1 for 1 from 40 to 49, 1 for 1 from 50 plus. Actually a better kicker, 2 for 2 statistically in a very, very small sample size. Better from distance than from a shorter distance. That's a tough call. Let's be fair to Manny Diaz. That's a tough call because on one hand, you are running the ball down their throats. So why not just keep running and running and running? And if you get stopped, you get stopped. Then you kick the field goal. If you don't get stopped, you score the touchdown, and they've got to score a touchdown to win the game. Okay. On one hand, that's the argument for running the football and trying to score the touchdown is that you're already succeeding at it. Might as well do it until they stop you. You don't have to try to snap the ball correctly, hold it correctly, kick it correctly to make a field goal. I already gave you the downside to that strategy. You can't control the clock if you're trying to score a touchdown. You can't say, like you can when setting up for a game-winning field goal, we're going to set up for a game-winning field goal. We're in a good place. It's going to be about a 35-yarder. Let's just run down the clock. Call timeout at 3 seconds left, kick the game-winning field goal. You can't do that if you're going to try to score the touchdown. You're just going to run every play as well as you can, and you may score the touchdown with 50 seconds left in the game. And then if Virginia took the ball right down the field and scored their own touchdown to win the game, then there would be that criticism. So it is a tough call. Once it got inside 30 seconds, something in that range, and I was running the football that effectively, considering my kicker was only 4 of 6 from that distance with no pressure or little pressure compared to that situation, I would have tried to score the touchdown. I would have run the plays, and most likely you're not going to run the ball in from 20 yards out with 2 or 3 attempts. But if somebody broke it and ran for the touchdown, then you scored the touchdown. You take a 5-point lead. You give Virginia the ball back with only 25 seconds left in the game. They've got to score a touchdown. Tough call, but that's how I would have played it. Without an automatic kicker like they have in the NFL where these guys are so much better. That's different. That's a different deal. Those kickers in the NFL, many of them, most of them, they're lights out from 35 yards. They're making that kick 90-some% of the time. Bo, good to see you. Badass Buckeye. We will see if Cincinnati can hang with the big boys when they play Notre Dame. Well, they beat Indiana, and they certainly hung with the big boys during the Peach Bowl last year. D-Rock, looks like ND will have Cone, Pine, Buckner all ready to play. Cone's ankle injury last week, but he looks ready to play according to D-Rock Irish. Maryland winning 27-10, Mo says. The pizza question of the night, web security. Pizza Hut or Papa John's? Man, see, I would have made the call for Pizza Hut up until the time I was up until maybe about 10 years ago, I would have told you Pizza Hut. Now I would say Papa John's. Pizza Hut was my place my entire life. My pizza selection was always Pizza Hut. I can think of a couple local spots that were probably a little bit better, but in terms of chain pizza, Pizza Hut #1 my entire life. And then I think their pizza went downhill, and maybe I just got sick of it. And now I would take a Papa John's over a Pizza Hut. But I haven't tried Pizza Hut. There was a point where the kids and I would get Pizza Hut on a regular basis, and I had had about 3 or 4 bad experiences with Pizza Hut. And so I finally was like, okay, there was one more bad experience with Pizza Hut. And I said, we're done. Done with pizza. No more Pizza Hut. Done. And I haven't been back since. And that was like 10 years ago. I had a similar situation with the kids and Friendlies. We used to love to go to Friendlies. Ice cream. Who can screw up ice cream? So Friendlies was great. Ice cream, and you just kind of put up with the food, and the food's okay, and it gets by, hamburger and fries, whatever. And you get your little coleslaw. I always liked the way Friendly did coleslaw. And there was one particular event, one particular outing at Friendly's, and just I'm looking around and I'm seeing the smashed French fries in the carpet, and the service was horrible. And if anybody out there works for Friendly's, has worked for Friendly's, has any type of connection to Friendly's, this is no knock on Friendly's in general. This was one particular time, coming off a couple other times that weren't the best experiences, but I've certainly had many good times at Friendly's. But on this particular time, yeah, the table's sticky and disgusting, and the glasses and the silverware dirty, and I'm looking at the carpet, it's disgusting, and the service is horrible, and the food's marginal, and you can get ice cream anywhere. And I just went, that's it. No more Friendly's. We're going on a Friendly's ban. So my kids from time to time have had to suffer through my declaration of a banning somewhere. That's happened a few times. Cal 1, Roll Tide. McD, if Maryland plays, Mike Locksley jokes will end. Everybody out there, no more Mike Locksley jokes. They are not allowed. McD says no more. None. D-Rock, you must ask this question before I answered. I've been going on about the Miami game for how long? The one thing I will say, I sit and watch these games, and a number of things come to mind, and I like to put a number of these topics into context and historical context. And then I think, okay, we're in the middle of a football season. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to cover the games. But I should put this in my back pocket, and we need to cover this during the off season and put this into some type of historical perspective. The thing that I will say about Miami football is I routinely hear from Miami people, meaning their fans, how they are playing down to their competition. I don't think that can ever be uttered again. How is Miami playing down to its competition when Miami is winning barely over 50% of its games over the past 15 years, and they're playing schools that are on the same level, or maybe, I'd love to run the numbers, playing better football over the last 15 years. So I don't know that Miami's playing down to their level. I think Miami's playing at its level. This is Miami's level. They're not playing down to any level. This is Miami's level. This is Miami football. They're not playing down. They're playing Miami football. Am I wrong? Cal 1, to his little brother is quarterback for Maryland, I think. Yes, you are correct there, sir. Mike likes Iowa 14-10. Not many points tonight. The Big Ten may have the best defensive conference in America, top to bottom. Weggy Ocean, what Big Ten team do you have the most faith in making the playoffs? My pick, Penn State. I made the comment the other day, I believe on Michigan podcast, that if somebody asked me, What team do I have the most faith in the Big Ten in terms of having a strong season, seriously contending for the conference championship or winning the conference championship, meaning 9-3 minimum, 10-2, 11-1? Do I have the most confidence that they are a really good team? My most confidence would be in Penn State right now. But if you're going to elevate that to the question being, there's going to be a Big Ten team win a playoff game. If somebody told me right now there's going to be a playoff win out of the Big Ten, who is going to get it? I would say Ohio State. I still think the ceiling is well beyond the rest of the teams in the conference. They got to play up to it, but it's still there. Lambda says Maryland had terrible injury luck the past several years at quarterback, too, from what I recall. Yes, they did. If you look at the combination of just poor recruiting at the position, poor player development, poor performance, of course, and injuries, the Maryland quarterback position, since I believe Danny O'Brien would be the last capable Maryland quarterback, it's been atrocious for about 10 years. About 10 years. The Maryland quarterback position. Let's see here. I'm going to start running through the Maryland passing statistics for the last decade, and this is going to drum up all sorts of memories. This is going to bring up players that I had long since forgotten about. What this reminds me of is one time at work, somebody found a website. If you know what website I'm talking about, please leave it somewhere in the chat. I'd love to be able to look up this website. Somebody knew of a website, an NFL website, where it showed you the starting quarterbacks for every NFL team, every game in history. So it would say, for example, Oakland Raiders, 1985, and it would show you Mark Wilson started this many games, Jay Schrader started this many games. Maybe one of them started 9 games and the other started 7 games. And I was able to get back to they started me on the Oakland Raiders. I remember I was being quizzed on the Oakland Raiders. And I could name all their starting quarterbacks from now, which was probably 3 years ago. And we went all the way back to like the early 70s. And before you say Kenny Stabler and Daryl LaMonica, etc., before you say them, I know about them. I know who they are. But there was like one oddball starter in there. There was somebody that started a game like in 1971 for the Oakland Raiders that I missed. Guy that started like one game. If you know that website, I'm going to look right now. Does anybody know what website I'm talking about? Looks like nobody's listening to me. Nobody knows. Maryland quarterbacks. Of course, it was Talia last year. So we won't go into that. 2019, it was, Josh Jackson, the Virginia Tech transfer. 2018, Kasim Hill. And, Tyrell Pregame. Yeah, bad quarterback play. 2017, Maryland had they basically had 4 quarterbacks in 2017. Max Bortenschlager, remember him, McD? Ryan Brand, Kasim Hill, and Tyrell Pregame. Terrible. 2016. Perry Hills, Tyrell Pregame, Caleb Rowe, Max Bortenschlager. Perry Hills, Caleb Rowe, Shane Cockerill. 2016. Perry Hills, Caleb Pregame, Caleb Rowe, Max Bortenschlager. Perry Hills, Caleb Rowe, Shane Cockerill. Perry Hills, Caleb Rowe, Shane Cockerill. Perry Hills, Caleb Rowe, Shane Cockerill. I'm guessing that Maryland, outside of maybe Kansas, has had the worst quarterback rating or TD to pick ratio in the last 10 years. CJ Brown. CJ Brown was okay. He was okay. Caleb Rowe also played in 2014. Really, the last good Maryland quarterback, I believe, was Danny O'Brien. CJ Brown had a decent season again in 2013. 13 touchdowns, 7 picks. 2012. Perry Hills, Sean Petty, Caleb Rowe. Man, just had to play all sorts of guys. There's Danny O'Brien in 2011. He didn't have much of a season. 2010, he had a much better season. So this is probably the best quarterbacking season for Maryland football here in 2021, Talia Tagovailoa, that we've seen since Danny O'Brien in 2010. 22 touchdowns, 8 picks. Lambdas, Michigan State for real. Where would you rank them in the East? Michigan State for real. When you say for real, I don't know exactly what you mean, but I'm going to take it as a serious contender for the division. If that's the question, I believe not. Not serious. Much improved. Yes. Quality team. Yes. Good team. Yes. Top 25 caliber team. Yes. Where would I rank them in the East? I've got some Big Ten power rankings out. In terms of how good I think they are, I believe that Ohio State's better, Michigan's better, Penn State's better. And they are so close with Indiana, Maryland, and maybe even Rutgers. The way these teams are playing right now, and teams will, of course, improve and decline throughout the season. It's a fluid situation, but the way they've looked right now through 4 games, with Ohio State not separating itself, with Penn State probably playing the most consistent football, best and most consistent football. The way they've played thus far, Penn State's playing the best. Then it's pretty close between, then it's probably, it's very close between Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland. Then it's Ohio State, Rutgers, Indiana. But the way these teams are playing right now, if Ohio State's talent does not take over, Penn State's the best team in the division. And Ohio State's the outlier because they're playing different football than everybody else. They're playing crappy defense, pass-happy offense, elite playmakers at running back and wide receiver. Everybody else is playing run-first offense, except Maryland to a certain extent, but run-first offense, grind it out, win the game, protect the football, and play excellent defense. What we are seeing right now, based on what we've seen out of all these teams, and specifically the one division game we've seen, is there's only been one, Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan. Rutgers, until I see differently, still the worst team in the division, but not by much. Respectable, good team, could go 3-6 in the Big Ten, get themselves to a bowl game. That Rutgers takes Michigan, beats them up in the second half, completely outplays Michigan on the road in the second half. This is what we could see the entire season. We could see these teams just beating up on each other. And the result could be a 7-2 or 6-3 division winner. We could see a 3-way tie for 6-3. If Ohio State doesn't pull it together, I would still say that Penn State's the best team. Penn State is the best combination of big talent that's playing like it. I would say right now Michigan State's going to go 5-4 in the Big Ten. They already have 2 wins in the Big Ten. Although those are probably the 2 worst teams they're going to see in the Big Ten, Nebraska and Northwestern. They hammered Northwestern. They were fortunate to slip by Nebraska. And so they've got 7 other games in the Big Ten. Of course, the other 6 division games, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, and then 1 game in the West. Don't know who that is. Michigan State. I don't know who the other, I'd have to look at their schedule. So I'm going to say that they go 3-4 in the next 7 games, 5-4 in the conference. That goes 8-4. Fifth Third Bank. Yes, I once had an account at Fifth Third Bank. Why is it called Fifth Third Bank? That would be a good Google search, Cow One. Put Google to the test. Jet Mech. Miami doesn't have Howard to buy players and bail them out of jail any longer. Nature Boy, I was 100% dead on with something. Thomas, will Ohio State run the table to make the playoffs? I think the odds are against it, but I wouldn't be surprised. They have the talent. I believe they have the coaching. There's no question they have the talent. They catch a bit of a scheduling break. They do not have to face Wisconsin or Iowa. Jet Mac thinks that Michigan is the best team in the Big Ten right now. With Oklahoma coming back to the pack, but they haven't lost. So Oklahoma could kick it into gear, and it could be just another Big 12 season with Oklahoma owning the Big 12. But the way they're playing, if they continue to play like this, they're going to trip up once, twice, 3 times. Ohio State, the same thing. They have yet to lose a game in the Big Ten. They've only played 1 game in the conference. Clemson, they've already lost a game in the conference and 2 overall. So all 3 of them, same narrative, have been brought back to the pack. That's what it looks like through 4 weeks. 1 of them, 2 of them, all 3 of them could course correct, and dominate again. It's possible, but it doesn't look like it. You typically don't course correct that much in a season. It looks like we're going to have crazy races in all 3 conferences, but the Big Ten is way up here. Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan State, even Maryland. Who have I missed? Penn State are all quality teams. Now they're going to play each other and they're going to lose games. So somebody's got to lose the game. So somebody's going to be like 5-4 in the conference. But I consider all those to be quality top 15 to 20 teams in the country. The Big 12's another version of that. The way it stands right now, we just saw Iowa State, who was supposed to play in the Big 12 championship game and may still, but they've already lost a conference game, their first conference game against Baylor. We've seen Oklahoma against a decent West Virginia team only win by 3 points on a last-second field goal at home. So Texas, TCU, Oklahoma State, Kansas State may be in the mix with Oklahoma and Iowa State. But that group is not as good as the group I just mentioned in the Big Ten. And then in the ACC is becoming the worst of those 3 versions. But think about it. Clemson lost to NC State. They could have lost to Georgia Tech. If they continue to play like that, they're going to lose again and maybe again. Wake Forest and Boston College, unless they get to be really good, unless there's something that we did not anticipate, they're going to lose games, but they happen to be 4-0 right now. And I don't believe Boston College has won a game in the ACC. I think all of those are non-conference wins. Wake Forest did win a game in the ACC against Virginia, so they are just starting the ACC season. But most likely, we're going to see the same thing in that conference. I am the most confident that we're going to see it in that conference of any of the 3 conferences that I named, that they're just going to beat up on each other. Georgia Tech's already beaten North Carolina, almost beat Clemson. North Carolina already lost to Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech lost to, well, they lost out of conference. Virginia beat Miami. Can't you see Wake, BC, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Miami, Virginia Tech. All those teams, they're all the same team. From a quality standpoint, they're all the same team. There's going to be a logjam of 5-3 teams in the ACC. All right, somebody wanted to call me tonight. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
How are you doing today?
I am doing just fine. I was just transitioning the phone, so I missed your name. Who's calling?
Oh, this would be Dewey. My name's Dewey.
Dewey, what's going on?
Well, I've been watching a whole lot of college football recently.
Good for you.
I've been eating it all up. And, let me just tell you one thing. The way Clemson be throwing their football, the football is literally not revolving enough times for it to really fly through the air. And now what I've noticed is if you can just really get your index and your ring finger and if you place a bit more pressure on the pressure points of the ball, you can actually get quite a spin going, and that'll just reach you right into the end zone.
Can you see my throwing motion? Is that what you're looking for right there? You're supposed to hold it back?
No, I'd put a bit more ring finger into it if I were you, partner.
Ring finger, yeah. I haven't used that ring finger for a while. Up by
just launch it. Don't be afraid to launch it.
Well, Dan Marino used to take that thing, just cock it right by his ear and just snap it.
Oh, he could hear the whoosh. He could hear the sonic boom. Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, man. Oh, that's exactly what I want. And that's what I teach my boys every day. I say, if you can't hear that whoosh, if you can't hear that crack, that snap, then you're literally doing the wrong thing and you're making your dad disappointed.
You don't want to disappoint Dad. Can't have that.
Certainly not, unless you want a whipping or a spanking. Who wants a spanking? I didn't think so.
No. So if the boys don't get enough on the throws, they get a spanking.
Enough of that whip on get some crack on their whip is really what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what's wrong with Clemson.
That's the Clemson's issue right now.
We need to get you through to Dabo on this.
Hey, patch me in. I'm happy. I'll be on hold for as long as he needs.
I wish I could. I would love to hear that conversation.
I'm ready to have it whenever. You just tell me a time.
Yeah, I'm not the person to set that up for you. Maybe you could call the university. And if you could guarantee them you're not going to lose another game this season, I can guarantee it. I just got to get this instruction to Dabo.
Yeah. And I'll say, excuse me, Sir Dabo, can I have a parlay with you? Just you and me. I'd love to just break down some mechanics. Now, do you think that get across, that get through?
I think Dabo would enjoy that.
I say, hello, Dabo. My name's Dewey. Nice to meet you. And when I shake the hand, I'll even put my finger, my pointer finger, and my ring finger. I'll give him a little extra squeeze. He'll know that I like to put that crack on my whip.
All right, Dewey. Anything else?
I mean, I'd love to see Maryland pull it out today.
Okay. Want to see Maryland win tonight? I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I'd love to watch that. I'd love to watch a Maryland get a W.
Is that because you like Maryland or you don't like Iowa or?
Yes, all of the above.
Okay.
To be honest with you, sir.
You don't like Iowa.
All right.
Got something against Iowa. Okay.
It's so true. It's so true.
All right, Dewey. Well, I appreciate the call.
I've got a lot against Iowa.
Okay.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you for your time.
You have yourself a good night.
I'm finna.
All right. So we got some throwing instruction tonight from Dewey. I didn't expect that. DJ Uyangalele Might be listening tonight. He's off tonight. Maybe he got home from practice, maybe flipped on the Voice of College Football, and maybe just in time to hear Dewey's instructions, possibly. George Blanda. Yes, George Blanda, Oakland. That was not the quarterback I was searching for. The quarterback that I missed. I knew that I was going to get a lot of like obvious Oakland quarterbacks in the live chat. I knew as soon as I brought up old Oakland Raider quarterbacks and that there was a very obscure one who started a game in the early 70s, I knew I was going to get a lot of obvious responses like this one. Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett, who did not play for the Raiders until 1980. Game of the week, Vandy Dandy. UConn at Vanderbilt. Scintillating. Who's carrying that gem? That sounds like an ESPNU game. Or is that going to be on the SEC network? Lambda. Iowa's offense versus Maryland's defense is what happens when a stoppable force meets a movable object. Vandy Dandy. Maryland messed up by not making James Franklin their coach after the 2010 season. Did they have that opportunity? I don't remember that coaching search at the time. Vandy Dandy is letting us know that James Franklin was the OC with a head coach in waiting deal, but Maryland passed on making him the head coach. I've heard something about that. I don't recall. That's been so long. Thanks for the insight there, Vandy Dandy. Lambda, Franklin, and Maryland would have crushed it. Then Penn State would have been stuck with Al Golden or something. Yes, Penn State and Iowa next week. Let's enjoy this week. Got some great matchups this week. Let's enjoy. John says, I'm not sure Franklin and Maryland would have been a home run. He still would have needed a top offensive lineman to compete in the Big Ten. And they're having issues with that at Maryland right now. Good to see Mozart's ghost. Maybe he and Nostradamus, they could have, I don't know what could be working there. Is the Big Ten the deepest conference? Interesting question. The Big Ten, the SEC, if we matched them up and we ranked them and seeded the teams 1 through 14 at one point, would one of the conferences be weak? So who's weak in the Big Ten right now? I don't think there's any question that Illinois is awful. They are the only team that I know that's awful. Minnesota may turn out to be awful. Rutgers could still be pretty bad. Purdue could still be pretty bad. Northwestern's pretty bad right now. Illinois and Northwestern are playing horrible football right now. Those two, unless something changes, and of course Northwestern has a better chance of showing us that they could be better because they have been better, but Illinois has been awful for years, and despite their opening win against Nebraska, are showing to be awful again. So we've got two definite bad teams in the Big Ten. And then we've got a few teams that could still show us that they're just as bad as we might have expected. And surprisingly, one of those teams is Minnesota. Also possibly Purdue, although Purdue's played pretty well. Played a good game against Notre Dame. They beat Oregon State. And Rutgers, maybe. Although, again, Rutgers has played pretty well. So, two bad teams in the Big Ten. SEC, really? One horrible team for sure. Vandy Dandy, where are you? Tennessee may not be that bad. They hung with Florida a little bit through at least the first half, and they lost by a touchdown to Pitt. I think that the SEC, Big Ten, deep. And then in terms of I'm looking at it from the bottom dweller standpoint in terms of the elite, or not the elite, but the second or third tier in the country, like who has top 20 caliber teams. I think that all the teams that I mentioned in the Big Ten, I think there were about 7, are legitimate top 25 teams. Now, whether they finish in the top 25, that's a whole other deal, because they may lose to other really good teams in the conference and not finish in the top 25 because they're not going to have the record, but they're a top 25 team. And I think there's about 7 in the Big Ten. Ohio State, Michigan, Michigan State, Maryland, Penn State, Iowa, Wisconsin. I'll go with 7 teams in the Big Ten that are roughly top 25 teams. In the SEC, Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Florida, Georgia, 6, maybe Mississippi State. Oh, Kentucky. It's a close call. And speaking of calls, let's pick one up right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? What's up, Mark? It's
DeAndre.
Man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on tonight?
So, you know what? I'm going to admit that I'm wrong about one thing, and this consider this year right here. I will say the Big Ten is either the first or second best conference. Other years, I won't give it that much credit, but this year, I will.
Well, I would still like to see more, but the way it's played out right now, the way it's played right out at this point is that I'm still pretty confident that the SEC is the best conference, but the results don't really show that. The results show that it might be the best conference, but I saw something posted on the SEC network that annoyed me today where it said, these are the top 5 things that we learned in college football in the first month. And they ran them down 5 down to 1. And their most important, most decided thing that was shown and displayed in college football the first month of this season was that the SEC is loaded. And I thought, well, first of all, we already knew that. Secondly, has the SEC really shown us that much? Have they really won? They won 6 and they've lost 5 against the other 4 conferences. And they haven't beaten anybody really that good. Probably Texas is the best team they've beaten.
Yeah. Getting to that, I'll say about 3 things and I'll let you go. One, have you ever noticed, I love my fellow Clemson guests with that come on your show with me. Everything I have said in the past has came true. And I was talking about Clemson offensive line, about Jackson Carman getting moved over with Cincinnati. There's a whole lot of stuff that I said Tony had play calling. Because I went back to the game against LSU, and I said Clemson doesn't have a variety of receivers. But now I read Jason and I hear Bobby and Fish Pete talk. I know I don't talk as good as they do, but they said the same things I said about a year ago. If you go back and look at our show together, I saw this coming. I'm not gonna say I saw us losing to NC State, but that first game against Georgia, man, I couldn't. You heard me say it. I couldn't understand why Clemson was favored. I can't even understand why they got a 16-point favorite over at Boston College this weekend, even if I know Boston College is playing at Clemson with a backup quarterback. I really don't see what they see in that offense a lot. And what I have noticed, I really haven't watched Ohio State, but Clemson and Oklahoma's offensive lines are terrible. I know Oklahoma has lost 2 games like Clemson has, but they're pretty close. And there's like Ole Miss blew out Tulane, and Oklahoma seemed like they had the most issues with Tulane. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, Is it the offensive line play? I don't watch Ohio State enough to tell you what their issue is outside. I know that they're young on that defensive line, and their linebackers are issues, which over the last couple of years it has been. So I just want to get your take on the offensive line play of Oklahoma and Clemson, and me coming close to already telling people that I saw it coming.
Yeah, you talked about that a number of times. I remember. I will say that I've seen Clemson play the entire game against Georgia, and I saw probably a half to 2/3 of the game against North Carolina State, and I just saw the highlights against Georgia Tech. And, once we see Georgia play some more good teams like they will tomorrow, we'll truly see if they're that devastating. Now, they played South Carolina a couple weeks later, and they were pretty devastating against them. But I saw about half that game, and I just didn't. They controlled the game, and they shut down the South Carolina offense, but they just didn't live in the backfield. Like most of Clemson's offensive plays couldn't be run in that game. It just seemed as though they just lived in the backfield, and they just, like, Clemson's offensive line was just awful in that game.
Well, if anybody looks at my channel, if you go back and look at that game, even against NC State was getting sacks with 3 offensive linemen. And remember, we had this conversation. I said, I don't understand why Clemson has not reached out. And I understand Dabo wants a family-type atmosphere, but sometimes you have to change. Because those guys, everybody that those position coaches, like Spiller, Grimsley, I don't know who the offensive line guy is, but my question is, what type of development are you doing? I don't understand. I have asked Jason this too. It's like, where's the slot receiver? When I heard Justin Ross playing the slot this year, I'm like, why? He's not a Sammy Watkins type receiver. Sammy was built like a running back, and he could do so much more like that. Ross to me is like, yo, dude, go run down the field, and we're gonna throw it up to you. You make an amazing catch, a 50-50 ball. We don't have that type of receiver like a Renfro, a Watson, or Tavis Scott. We don't have that on our team this year, and we do have it. They just young. Like I think his name is Troy Stello. He was one of the top slot receivers to come out this past year, but I guess because he's so young, he's inconsistent and is not running routes. But I saw this problem coming a miles away, and everybody was like on my channel said, DeAndre, why do you want them to bring Chad Morsey back? There's no creativity in our offense. If you even go back to the LSU game, most of those were vertical routes. Now, last year, they seemed like they ran different types of routes, but you had different types of receivers. This year, it just seems like it's all run these long pass routes, and we'll throw it to you, but you don't have the time to throw it because people ain't falling for the play action because you can't run the ball. Then you can't block it when you drop back into and 5 or 7 yard step drops. So I mean, I saw this problem coming miles away, man. After Cameron left, I said this about a year or two ago. I can't tell you the last time Clemson has had an offensive line outside Carmen Jackson drafted outside in the top 2 rounds. I know Simpson and them guys went, but think about Mitch Hyatt. Mitch Hyatt was a 4-year starter and was like the best player out of Ohio, and he didn't even get drafted. Carmen Jackson, I don't know if you remember me and Jason talking about this, but I remember me telling Jason, he ain't going to play left tackle. He's going to get moved to the right side. And I don't understand why Clemson doesn't start Travis Lay and move Martin McFadden into the left guard spot, because he's not going to be built to play left tackle. He's a 6'2" guy, and I'm not saying it's all his fault. The Parks is mainly one of the guys that can't beat. The Parks just don't need to be in the game. I don't know why they keep playing him. If you don't get beat like that, you might as well put the 5-star freshman in and see what he can do. And I just don't understand it. But however, yeah, I just think Clemson, until they get their offensive line straight, they're not gonna be able to proceed any farther. And I think that's where the key word starts at. I think DJ got all the talent in the world. He need to learn how to put touch on the ball. But I don't understand how the 2 games we saw last year, why there's so much a big drop off to this year, and it has to be the offensive line, or you're not developing the right way. And that's what I would say.
So if we took the offensive line, DeAndre, if we took the offensive line recruiting at Clemson, if we took the offensive line and took the 4 classes that comprise the roster right now and compared it to the other position groups, the offensive line would not be as highly rated, would it, as the other position groups on either side of the ball? Meaning that they have not recruited quite as well on the offensive line, correct?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. If you ever go look at what Clemson does, Mitch Hyatt came in, he started it off, then Carmen Jackson came in, and Lay was supposed to be the next big thing at left tackle. And then the other guys are kind of like 4 and 3 stars. So, they haven't recruited that area like Georgia and Alabama had. So, no, I totally agree with you. They have not done what they're supposed to do at the offensive line. But I have been saying that. It's like, this offensive line is going to eventually get us in trouble. I mean, and I even take it away from Clemson. Look at what happened to Patrick Mahomes when they got rid of him, when they got rid of his offensive lineman. Look at what started happening to Jared Goff when they got rid of his offensive line. I mean, these guys struggle. When you start getting your offensive line falls apart, that's why I could never understand why there's so much emphasis put in the quarterback. When I see teams in the NFL build their teams, I think you should start at the offensive line. I think Zach Wilson is a great talent, but I think they had drafted a kid out of Louisville, but then they should have graduated, got the guy out of Oregon or the guy out of Northwestern, and I think they would have been all right, like building their offensive line. Because look at what San Diego's doing with Slater. You got to build that offensive line. If you don't have that offensive line, you ain't going to be able to do nothing. We don't see that. Big Ben, man, he can't stay off the ground. Every time you turn around, somebody's sacking him. And that's the same thing with DJ. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. But, I like I said, I saw it coming. And Tony Elliott is just – everybody keeps saying he's a good head coach. Jason told me when we were talking on your show that, yeah, he's a smart guy. He knows people are figuring out their tendencies. So if you know people are figuring out your tendencies, where's the development? I just don't get it. And like I said on my show, I talk all the time. I'm sorry.
Well, when it comes to the play calling and not being creative enough, as you had mentioned before, I would think that some of these coaching staffs are so large that I would have one of those guys just scour tape of the best offenses in the country and just steal plays. Well, why wouldn't you do that?
That's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at Joe Burrow, and I know Joe Burrow is great, but like his first 2 years, he couldn't even get on the field. Then the third year, he was about average. But then his senior year, when he got Joe Brady and somebody to open up the offense, look at what it did for him.
Sure.
And that's what I'm saying with Clemson. We have not taken that into consideration, and we haven't done it. I mean, I always beat Boston College. I mean, Dabo, I said on my show, Dabo points out that, we've been down this road before. Yes, we have. But now you got to depend on NC State losing to somebody else. And unless it's Carolina at the end of the year, who else is there? that you got to hope State can lose to. They got to lose 2 more games. Not saying it couldn't happen because NC State does this all the time. They lose to people they're not supposed to. But I'm just saying that it's a long stretch that you got to fix your team on top of that. I mean, I'm hoping that we beat Boston College. It's been a long time since I had to say, I hope we win instead of knowing we're going to win and just name what the scores are going to be until we got to Alabama or to the Ohio States or the Oklahomas of the world. But now it's like, man, are we really – that our offense is that bad that we got to be wishing that we beat Boston College with a backup quarterback. I mean, it's really that bad. I couldn't even pick on Miami fans this week yesterday because of what happened to them. But yet I said, man, should Clemson look like – I mean, I'm sorry. They just look straight doo-doo on offense, man. I just don't – I personally just don't get it. So, hey, well, last question. I'll let you go.
Sure, and then I'm going to ask you a question.
First? Okay. So, who's going to get fired first, Manny Diaz or Mike Norvell?
Wow. I think Florida State's worse. I think Florida State's worse than Miami. But I think since they just let go of Willie Taggart, that I don't think they want to cough. I don't know what kind of contract Mike Norvell has, but they're going to have to cough up quite a bit of money to get rid of him, pay out his contract. But Manny Diaz, my goodness, I got to think he's sitting at 2-3. He could easily be 1-4, but he's 2-3, and he's got he's finished out non-conference play, so they've got 7 conference games left. If they go 3-4, he could go 6-6. I would think that they would get rid of him. I would.
Yeah. And see, the thing about it is I got to hope Miami beats NC State on the 23rd. NC State got to find a couple of losses in there to help us out.
So, DeAndre,
what was your question for me, Mark?
Well, you were talking about offensive line recruits, and so I just picked 2020 because I figured, okay, well, those guys are juniors now, or they're redshirt sophomores, or with this extra COVID year, whatever you call them, they're in their 3rd year. And the first 4 or 5 signees in that 2020 class for Clemson are superstar potential guys. They're guys that were right at the top of the class: Brian Brissy, Miles Murphy, DJ, DeMarcus Bowman, Trenton Simpson. Okay. The next guy, you've got Walker Parks, was the 5th rated offensive tackle in the country, a top 50 player in the country. You had Paul DeChico, 3rd rated offensive guard.
North Carolina. Yeah.
3rd rated offensive guard.
Raleigh, North Carolina.
And Mitchell Mays is out of Raleigh. Mitchell Mays, the 6th rated guard in the country. So they had the 5th rated guard and the 6th rated guard in the country. They had a top 5 offensive tackle. What happened to those guys?
That's my point. If you look at Tate, the guy that Marcus Tate, the one that started at left guard against Georgia, I was sitting up there scratching my head. I'm like, he got a freshman starting. He must be a beast, because you're thinking that Taka and Mays were both gonna be like beasts coming in this year. They got a chance to redshirt. And I'm like, man, why? That's what I'm saying. This offensive line guy, I think he's their top recruiter, though. I'm not really sure. I think that's him. But I'm like, man, he must be a heck of a recruiter, but just can't be just not a good offensive line guy. And I don't understand. Like I said, to me, Dabo should go in and talk to look around the country and talk to different people on their offensive tackle. That's what Morris did. Morris went out and learned his offense from the guy at Vegas when he had Boyd. Not Vegas, at Nevada. He took parts of their offense, and that's how Boyd got so good. Sometimes you got to go look at other people. And I just don't understand, like, why hasn't Dabo reached out to NFL coaches to be analysts. I mean, I don't know if he has or has not, but you would think that he'd be able to throw them enough money and say, "Hey, don't you want to come and help us out for a year or two while you're getting yourself together?" I mean, that's what Nick Saban does, especially on the offensive end. It's never on the defensive end. And let me also say this: I don't know how much you watch your Clemson football, but Clemson's playing a lot of cover 4 lately. And I've been kind of wondering why. I asked Jason, did he see that? He said he had to go back and watch the tape. Well, if you go watch anything on my channel, and I put it out there, Clemson did not blitz as much. Even when the other guys went out, well, he had Dexter Lawrence and Wilkins, he was still blitzing that A gap over the center. He was still blitzing that A block. I'm not saying Breezy and Davis is better than Dexter Lawrence and Wilkins, but he was still blitzing, and he had Farrell on the edge. He was still blitzing that A gap. So I was wondering why they didn't do that against NC State. NC State got a good left tackle, but the rest of the offensive line is kind of suspect. They didn't do it at all. So, but all right, Mark, man, I enjoy listening to the show, man. I was trying to figure out who I was betting on between Tulsa and Houston. Then I saw Houston's schedule. Yeah. And I saw Houston's schedule and I saw Tulsa's schedule. Like, damn, Tulsa did play a lot harder schedule than Houston did. I mean, Tulsa played they played Oklahoma State, Ohio State, and I want to say Oklahoma too. I said, man, I can see why they won in 3.
Yeah, they haven't played Oklahoma,
so,
but played the other 2.
Oklahoma State and Ohio State.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't stick with it long. But all right, Mark. Oh, they lost to California Davis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how I forgot that one. But
all right,
have a good night, Mark. I've been listening to the show.
Appreciate that. You have a good night too. All right, we've got a super chat just came in here from We Are Penn State 76. Mark, I'm a bit worried about USC poaching James Franklin after this season. If he bolts, who do you think makes the short list of replacements? Top 3. Okay. I don't want to say not to be worried, although the good book tells us not to worry. But I understand your concern there about James Franklin leaving for USC. I consider those to be very parallel jobs, but depending on what his aspirations are, depending on what they promise him and how much money they're willing to pay him, and if he feels as though he can go to another conference and that conference and dominate, that might be an attractive situation for him. So even though I think it's pretty much a parallel position, and of course Penn State football's in a better place right now, much of that due to James Franklin, than USC football is, it could be worth the jump for him. So who's on the short list of replacements? Well, the same candidates we hear all the time. Let's get those guys out of the way first and foremost. So anytime there's a big job opening, you think of, okay, well, who are the likely candidates for any job opening that's a top level first-rate job? The same guys are going to be under consideration. Then who are those fits for that program, whether they be because they have ties to the school or there's a regional connection or something. And so for Penn State, you're going to talk about Matt Campbell. You're going to mention Luke Fickell, PJ Fleck. Those are the first 3 guys that come to mind. And then beyond them, who do we have that would be attractive? Who's succeeding elsewhere at the group of 5 level? Can't think of anybody else since Memphis just switched coaches not long ago. And obviously Boise State with Andy Avalos from Washington. I don't think Mario Cristobal would leave Oregon to go to Penn State. I think many people believe that he has two destinations in leaving Oregon, and that would be Miami or Alabama. And Nick Saban's not stepping down, I don't believe, anytime soon. So my number one candidate for Penn State, and I don't know if he would take the job, but would be Luke Fickell, with PJ Fleck and Matt Campbell also in the running. Those would be the three guys that I would target first and foremost. I'm sure that other people can come up with other names that are tied to the program that I'm missing right now. John is saying that as an LSU fan, he hopes Ed Ogeron is available to interview for the Penn State job if Franklin leaves for USC. If Penn State considers interviewing Ed Ogeron with all the other possibilities out there, they're dumb. I would not go near Ed Ogeron. He would not be a candidate of mine if I were Penn State. Lambda's saying, what about Bill O'Brien? What a bang-up job he did the first time around. I don't know if I think that they could still do better than Bill O'Brien, but it's an interesting name to bring up because of what he accomplished his first go-around at Penn State, and people have to be very respectful and very grateful for what he did for Penn State football. I don't think James Franklin would have succeeded to any degree which he has without Bill O'Brien's work in front of him. Rocky Top K 904, voice of college football. Who and which kind of coach do you think would work best for Miami with struggles on both sides of the ball? Okay, I would say forget both struggles on both sides of the ball, unless you get a very heavy offensive guy or heavy defensive guy, and the trend seems to be hiring heavy offensive-minded coaches. Then you want to counter that with a very strong defensive coordinator, strong in the sense that he knows personnel, he knows schemes, he has a scheme, he can scheme the defense, but he also is a strong personality, because you don't want your team to be one-sided. You don't want your team to have the reputation of a Texas Tech under Mike Leach, or where one side of the football is ignored. You don't want that. We've seen it in the past. I don't necessarily think that we have it now in college football. I can't really see a situation with a decent team out there or a pretty relevant school that has that type of imbalance, but we've seen it many times in the past. So you don't want that. And if you do get that out of a head coach, he wants to bring along a strong coordinator on the other side of the ball. Okay, so I'm not going to be too concerned about that in terms of Miami struggling on both sides of the ball. Mario Cristobal is the obvious guy to go after because of his work at Oregon, what he's accomplishing there, and his ties to Miami. So I don't know. I cannot speculate. People have about Mario Cristobal and where his mind would be, and whether he would be approachable or not, because he's achieving much at Oregon. It would take a lot to pry him away, but the alma mater, when the alma mater calls and the alma mater is at the level of Miami, it's difficult to turn down. I don't know about his thoughts or how high of a priority it is about where he wants to live, where his family wants to live, where he wants to raise a family. For some coaches, that is very meaningful and impactful. And for other coaches, it's more about just money and opportunity to win. So he'd be taking a step down. I don't think there's any question about that. In a number of ways, he'd be taking a step down from what he's built at Oregon to take the Miami job. But that doesn't mean he would not do it. I don't think Fickell, Fleck, or Campbell would take the Miami job. I don't think that they would take the Miami job. which kind of coach? I think what you're looking at is taking a coach who has proven something somewhere. One of the issues that I've had with Miami's hiring of coaches going all the way back to Butch Davis. Butch Davis is the last Miami coach who proved capable of the job. Mark Richt was capable of the job, but didn't stick around long enough, and it was at the end of his career. And I think we see, based on his health status and just where he is in life, that he was not prepared to take on that job and give it his all with full energy and focus. But Mark Richt was the one guy in the last 20 years at the Miami program who obviously proved at Georgia that he was capable of handling and succeeding at the highest level. Okay. The highest level meaning a top-notch football program. Other than that, every coach that Miami has hired has not succeeded anywhere. They did not succeed in the Miami job. They did not succeed in any jobs prior to the Miami job. They did not succeed anywhere after the Miami job. Randy Shannon, Al Golden. Again, we addressed Mark Richt. Now Manny Diaz. Did I miss anybody since Larry Coker? Shannon, Golden, Richt, Diaz. It's been shown in a number of places that you can hire a successful coordinator or somebody who's achieved at the head coaching level at a lower place. And if you're confident in who that person is, then you can achieve. But Miami's a different sort. I think where they are right now with the football program, they need a strong personality and they need a lot of credibility. So there are a number of schools that had the infrastructure and they had the strength within the football program, the athletic department, and the administration to say, we can hire somebody who's capable, and we're giving them such a strong support system that they'll succeed, versus Miami needing somebody who's a driver, a strong-willed, determined, and smart individual with a personality to recruit and a plan and the track record to show that they've succeeded. And of course, Luke Fickell, PJ Fleck, and Matt Campbell have to varying degrees. Mario Cristobal has as well. Anybody else out there? I don't think David Shaw's a fit. I don't know that you would pry Chip Kelly away from UCLA. I don't believe so. You know, a guy like Gary Patterson's a tremendous coach. I don't know that he hasn't seen his better days. I think a little bit of his fire is gone. I don't know that he really fits the Miami scene. I was thinking the same thing about Mike Gundy. I think they have passed their window of opportunity and their window of really excelling as a head coach and really being a top tier, top of the line coach. I don't really see Pat Fitzgerald taking on a Miami situation, but he's an excellent coach. Maybe it would be interesting to see Pat Fitzgerald actually take on a team that had the type of talent that could win a conference instead of always having the underdog overachievers on the team. I don't know if Jeff Hafley could be pulled away from Boston College. You know, he's not been at Boston long enough to necessarily prove that he can get the job done, but his first season was certainly a good indication. In the start of his second season, Jeff Hafley is an up-and-comer in the coaching field and might be ready to take on that Miami situation. I know that a lot of people like Lane Kiffin, what he's doing at Ole Miss, what he's done elsewhere, that he's now matured and is prepared for that kind of job. He's got that kind of job. Actually, he's, in a sense, got a better job at Ole Miss than what Miami has to offer right now. I don't know how you compare those jobs. They're a different sort. They're a apples and oranges kind of comparison. But right now, Ole Miss in many ways is a better job. Yes, Big Red Pyro. Pat Fitzgerald is very underrated by everybody except for apparently the voice of college football, who rated Pat Fitzgerald the best coach in the Big Ten. Edward says Bob Stoops is still on Fox. Seems he is not ready to hang it up yet, meaning hang it up from a coaching standpoint. You know, Mac Brown came back, and despite his troubles this season, seems as though he's got that North Carolina program headed in the right direction. D-Rock, I would put Pat Fitzgerald and P.J. Fleck from a success standpoint in two different categories. P.J. Fleck, he might be a one-season wonder. He was not at Western Michigan. Consider what P.J. Fleck accomplished at Western Michigan. When he took over that program, they went 1-11 his first season. And by the time he left, they were playing. Let this sink in. Western Michigan was playing in the Cotton Bowl. Western Michigan was a New Year's Six team that played within 8 points of Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl. Went undefeated. Beat a couple Big Ten teams that season, and then almost beat Wisconsin in the Cotton Bowl. And he left with the 2 top recruiting classes in the MAC. Then he goes to Minnesota, has a bad first season, is in the process of having a bad second season, turns it around, makes the proper moves that he needed to. And sometimes you got to make these moves, and it's uncomfortable and it's not popular. But he fired his defensive coordinator. P.J. Fleck fired his defensive coordinator with 4 games left in the season and immediately turned around that situation, went from 2-6 to 7-6, beat a lot of good teams down the stretch in 2018, won a bowl game over Georgia Tech. Then that set him up for a big 2019. Now, they didn't have the greatest 2020 season, but some people would give him a pass for that. And now, here in 2021, they're not off to the greatest start. They've lost 2 games and just lost to Bowling Green, but I still like PJ Fleck. I still believe in him. I just think the Minnesota situation is limited. The Northwestern situation is even more limited, but Pat Fitzgerald has had more than 1 or 2 good seasons at Northwestern. He's had several outstanding seasons at Northwestern. Number one ND fan is telling us that Mac Brown will not make it through this year because he's decided to step down and call it quits. That I could see more so than North Carolina waving goodbye. They're not waving goodbye. They could go 4-8 this year. They're not saying goodbye to Mac Brown. Now, maybe if he's gotten to a place where he figures, okay, I'm not ready to take this. I've just gotten to a place in life that it's just too much. Maybe. John is telling us that Lane Kiffin is making $4 million a year and just signed an extension this offseason. Miami ain't willing to pay that kind of money it's going to take to get him out of Oxford. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. That's basically what I alluded to there. I didn't know exactly what Lane Kiffin was making. That sounds about right. $4 million a year at Ole Miss. That's a lower level SEC paycheck. I don't think Bob Stoops is going to get back into the game either. He just doesn't seem like the personality to do it. It seems as though he had a tremendous, amazing run, one of the great runs in college football. Probably a top 20 coach in the history of college football at Oklahoma. Accomplished everything that he possibly could. Relatively young man that can ride off into the sunset, have a TV gig, enjoy his family, and that's something that he prioritized when he was at Oklahoma. He's probably fine without having to deal with the grind of recruiting and dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. Thank you, John, on the Lane Kiffin contract. Jonelle is saying that Patterson is life, meaning a lifer at TCU. Oh, I like that. I like those two. Not necessarily Hugh Freeze. I know Cam Underwood definitely would not be happy with a Hugh Freeze hire. Not happy with a Hugh Freeze hire. He made that very clear on our Miami show a couple of weeks ago. But Bronco Mendenhall, I think, is an excellent coach. It's difficult to win at Virginia. He's not necessarily doing it. He had one good season, but still, they were a dumpster fire, classic dumpster fire when he took over that program. Bronco Mendenhall. Some coaches I would just like to see what could they do at a place where they could recruit big talent. Pat Fitzgerald, Bronco Mendenhall. Mark D'Antonio is not that old, is he? Is Mark D'Antonio that old? I know nobody brings up Mark D'Antonio, but look at his coaching record. It's ridiculously good. He's the greatest coach ever in Michigan State history. It's not even close. They did had Duffy Dougherty in the 60s, I know. Oh, okay. Art Briles' son. I started to read that comment from Larry coming in here. Why doesn't someone go after Art Briles' son? I know he's an OC now for someone. Can't name who. Well, Kendall Briles is at Arkansas. But I honestly loved what him and his father did for Baylor, right? He's at Arkansas. You guys are coming up with some good names because DJ Durkin has turned it around since Maryland. DJ Durkin has laid the groundwork for what is being done right now with Mike Loxley at Maryland. That's DJ Durkin's team, basically. He recruited top 15 classes at Maryland. Mark D'Antonio, 65. Thank you so much for that. Number one ND fan. That's a fairly young man in this day and age. Yes, DJ Durkin and Hugh Freeze, and who else have that type of reputation? Who else besides those two guys have some baggage that would have to be taken on? All right. Let's see. We are sitting here at 7:58, so we've got college football coming up here in just a few minutes. Again, at noon Eastern, man, Arkansas, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Texas, TCU, all going at it at noon Eastern time. Some phenomenal games, along with Tennessee, Missouri, Minnesota, Purdue. Okay, then we get going at 12:30. Wake Forest and Louisville, an under-the-radar, very important game in the ACC. Then, of course, Cincinnati, Notre Dame at 2:30. That gets us in good shape for the 3:30 window with Alabama, Ole Miss, Stanford, Oregon, Oklahoma, Kansas State, Ohio State, and Rutgers play at 3:30 as well. And we've got Florida State and Syracuse, West Virginia, and Texas Tech. Then as we head toward the evening hours, we've got a 6 o'clock Eastern time kickoff with Florida, Kentucky. I love that game. North Carolina State, Louisiana Tech, under the radar, decent game possibly there. Also in prime time, we've got Texas A&M taking on Mississippi State, Baylor, Oklahoma State on ESPN2, prime time Saturday night. Penn State, Indiana is the ABC game in prime time. Also, Michigan State, Western Kentucky, Clemson, Boston College on the ACC network, Nebraska, Northwestern. Really, for as good as the day is overall, the primetime window isn't necessarily that overwhelming. Penn State, Indiana, by far the best game. but Clemson, Boston College right there as well. Nebraska, Northwestern, Auburn, LSU. Okay, kick it in at 9 o'clock. And I am going to be distracted. I'm going to warn everybody tomorrow night when you're calling in, when we do our after the primetime window call-in show, that I'm going to be keeping an eye on UCLA and Arizona State. I like that matchup. Should be a good one. We'll let all of you get to kickoff. Iowa and Maryland. Appreciate everybody being here. Enjoy the game. Be right back here after the game with Corey and Coach Don Patterson with the wrap up on Maryland and Iowa right here at the Voice of College Football. Please be locked in because I'll be releasing all the post-game shows that are going to be available to you throughout our 26 channel network. And, of course, right here at the Voice of College Football, I'll be locked in right here on the national beat to cover and discuss all of that with you tomorrow right here at the Voice of College Football. Enjoy Iowa and Maryland.